In May, I finally graduated from university. My school is in a very safe, very upper middle class community. Most instances of crime were committed by students and were typical of most college campuses: sexual assault and burglary. Reported instances of crime were typically on campus or in the downtown area and frat row. My school also had a few highly publicized sexual assault scandals, so I was already wary of the dangerous situations and avoided being most places alone at night. I lived off campus, an area that backed up to a part of town that was mostly families and the elderly. I never really felt unsafe until my senior year, when I had 2 run-ins with peeping Toms. The first incident happened at the beginning of my final spring semester. I was often at my friend's apartment on the opposite end of town, usually just to hang out and do some homework. Their apartment was part of a complex that was solely for students and more or less run by the university. 4 of my friends lived in this suite-style apartment on the ground floor. But on this night, which was a Sunday, only 2 of them were home, and another was driving back to the area that night from her parents' house. All of us actually come from the same geographical area, and since graduation, we all still live near each other, which is great. I was hanging out with one of my friends who lived in the apartment. We'll call her Pat, and another friend that lived in the same building. We were waiting for our other friend, Brianna, who was driving back that night. I really wanted to wait for Brianna, but she was pretty notorious for being late. So after hanging out for a few hours, I was ready to go back to my apartment. As I was pretty tired already and wanted to Skype with my boyfriend before bed, I said goodbye to my friends and left, probably around 10:30 or 11 o'clock. I walked out into the parking lot and towards guest parking. Guest parking is situated up a tiny little incline at the other end of the building. As I mounted the small hill, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye and stopped very briefly. Turning to look to my left, I saw a man hurriedly stand up and move away from a first-floor window with its lights on. I remember he was distinctly middle-aged, heavier set and balding, wearing a red t-shirt and jeans. My presence seemed to spook him as he began to move around the back of the building, out of my sight. He was also not very far from me, and I was spooked as well. So I quickly moved up the hill and got into my car. It was highly unusual to see a man of his age in the apartment complex, and my internal alarms were going off. When my doors were locked, I texted my friend Pat to tell her to make sure all her windows were locked and that they secured their back door, which didn't have a working lock. The apartment complex was slow to address tenant complaints. I told her I saw a man creeping around the first floor windows. I know our friend Brianna often left her window unlocked, so she could open it when she smoked. After alerting her, I drove back to my apartment, which was about 5 minutes. I was a little shaken, and I basically sprinted from my car to my apartment's back door. When I got inside, I Skype called my boyfriend, checked my texts. Pat and the other roommate that was home had locked all the windows and turned off the lights in the main living area. Pat told me I should report the incident to the police, and I was a little torn about doing so. My boyfriend agreed that I should report it, and I called the police department directly instead of 911. The officer that answered took my description and my personal info and thanked me for the call. He told me they would be sending some squad cars out to investigate. I didn't have any further contact with the police after that, but my friend Brianna said she arrived back at her apartment as the police were pulling up, lights flashing. Apparently, they couldn't find the guy, but the apartment complex did issue a warning and the description of the creeper. I'm glad I did call the police, even if they didn't find the man. My next encounter with the peeping Tom happened closer towards the end of the same semester. This is the one that scared me the most. For the first time in my life, I had my fight-or-flight instincts kick into overdrive. I was coming back from my same friend's apartment one night, and it was late, and it was fairly dark and windy. My apartment complex had only a few lights in the parking lot, and only a light at each front door on the buildings. More often than not, I would enter my apartment from the back door, which was a huge sliding glass pane. The backs of the apartment building were not lit, and each ground floor patio and bedroom window had hedges next to them, which made hiding pretty easy. On this particular night, I should have entered through the front door, but the back door was closer and I wanted to get inside, out of the wind. I walked across the parking lot, into the back of my building, head down against the wind. I looked up as I got closer to my apartment, and my heart leapt into my throat. There was someone standing behind my neighbor's bushes, directly in front of their bedroom window. The silhouette was distinctly male, with short hair and broad shoulders. My fear was instantaneous. Whoever it was had seen me, and they ducked pretty quickly behind the bush. Knowing they had nowhere to really run, with me right in their path, I remember cursing myself because I had left my knife in my purse, and I had nothing in my backpack to defend myself with. I only had my keys in my hand. Knowing that, I sprinted to my back door as fast as my fat legs could carry me, cursed to myself as I struggled with the lock in the darkness, and got inside as quickly as I could. I locked the door and drew the curtain shut, backing away into the darkness. I was fucking terrified at this point. I thought I was alone in the apartment, and I thought this guy definitely knows I live here now. The only thing separating me from him was a glass pane. I rushed into my room. Livid that the apartment complex didn't put locks on our doors, I called my boyfriend almost in tears, telling him what happened as I looked for the knife. He stayed on the phone with me for a little bit as I calmed down. He was angry, but there was nothing he could do for me, being so far away. This time, I strongly considered calling 911 because this incident had happened only 20 or so feet from my own apartment. My body was pumping with adrenaline, which only made me feel more jumpy and scared. However, my boyfriend told me that the guy was probably gone at this point anyway, and that seeing me had scared him off. The fact that he had ducked to avoid me made it seem likely he had no intentions of hurting me, and I had interrupted his creeping. I was still scared, but I thanked him and hung up. What if the guy was still in the complex, looking for more windows he could see into? I texted my roommates asking if they were home. Both of them were, and they had been trying to fall asleep when I ran into the apartment like a madwoman. Both emerged from their rooms, and I told them about what I saw, and my one roommate told me that she was just as scared as I was. Apparently, the girls had been reporting on Yik Yak that a man dressed in all black, face covered, had been harassing girls on and off campus, going so far as to chase some of them and threaten them. I was hoping the individual that I had encountered was not that person. I didn't sleep a wink that night. My bed was directly underneath a large window that sat at ground level, and I was always uneasy about it. But that night, it was much worse. I felt safer knowing I wasn't alone, but for the rest of the semester, I was extra cautious at night when I came home from work or my friend's place. I always had my knife in a reachable pocket. In hindsight, I really regret not reporting the incident to the police or the apartment complex. I didn't even say anything to our neighbors. They usually had all their blinds and curtains open at night. You could always see inside. For the two girls that lived there, that didn't seem so smart to me. But I didn't say anything to them because I didn't know them, and figured they wouldn't believe me. However, about a week later, I started noticing that at night, all their blinds and curtains were drawn. And I began to wonder if maybe they had seen someone at their window one night. I no longer live in that town, but to anyone out there that gets a kick out of peeping into people's homes, let's not meet. This whole thing happened a few months ago. I love my family, but they're really religious and conservative, and as a gay man, that can be quite problematic. I've never come out to my family, and only a handful of people know about my sexual orientation. I used to hate that I'm gay, and I'm still quite sensitive about it. Anyway, about 3 or 4 months ago, I decided to give Tinder a go, for shits and giggles. On my second day of Tinder, I came across a guy named Lucifer Z, a guy with long pink hair, all black contact lenses, his face covered with piercings and both arms covered with sleeve tattoos. I can't recall if I did it to be rebellious towards my Christian upbringing, or if I really did think he was attractive, or because I'm obsessed with all things macabre and horror related. However, I gave him a like and moved on. A few hours later, I got a message from Lucifer Z saying that he thought I was pretty cute. I didn't know how to feel about this. On the one side, I was flattered, but on the other, Christian upbringing side, I was disgusted with myself, that I had put myself in this position. The next day, I decided to message him back. Fast forward to a month later. After a lot of Tinder messages, texting, Snapchat conversations, I agreed to meet him. He said his band was playing in a heavy metal nightclub in the city, and that I should come and watch. And so I did. After a set, we met up and got drunk and had a wild night. The next morning, I woke up in bed with him in his apartment. He was really sweet that morning, looking so much different without all his black contact lenses and piercings. He made me breakfast. We talked about this and that, and then I went home. We texted and called over the next few days, going out to places together. I had really fallen for him. Then things got really fucked up. He texted me on Saturday night, asking if I wanted to come with him to a devil-worshipping ritual with him at some guy who I'd never met's place. I declined, not really feeling comfortable with the whole thing. He texted me back, "Suit yourself, bitch." I didn't know if he said this because he was angry with me for not wanting to go with him, or if he meant it as a joke. Either way, I forgot about it. At 2 a.m., he texted me this really disturbing and fucked up video of him and two other guys dressed in black robes murdering a sheep. I was really disturbed by this and called him, launching abuse at him for sending me this video. All he said in reply was, "Satan wants your soul, gorgeous." I was stunned into silence. It was such a weird, bloody thing to say. And it wasn't just what he said, but the way he said it. From the sound of his voice, I could tell he was on ice. He called himself a casual meth head, whatever the fuck that is. I instantly freaked out and blocked him from everything. And 2 weeks later, I decided to unblock him. This was a big mistake. He sent me a Snapchat of him holding a dead cat with the caption, "I'm gonna slit your throat and fuck your corpse, motherfucker." I almost blacked out from fear and immediately called the cops. They picked him up and told him to leave me alone, and then charged him with animal cruelty charges. They found the sheep killing video and another video of him killing a dog on his phone. I haven't heard from him after the police got involved, and I'm relieved that I can finally put this whole fucked up incident behind me. Thanks for letting me tell my story. I needed to get it off my chest. Since this incident, I haven't dated again, and probably won't for a while. I'm a 22-year-old female, but this happened when I was 13. I'll start off with some necessary background information. When I was 13, my aunt lived in a huge apartment complex with 150 plus units within the same city as my mom and dad. I would visit her all the time, just to spend time with her. Her complex had a great park and swimming pool. I was also very close to some of the neighborhood kids that were around my age. And this was during the summer of 2007. I was going to 7th grade that year, and this was the summer I stayed with my aunt to get out of my house. My aunt's apartment was on the bottom floor, in the very corner of her building. The buildings in the complex were surrounding the park and pool I frequented, to create a sealed-off community with 2 exits to the main road. The buildings were 3 stories high, with 6 apartments on each level, all connecting to an outside corridor which connected to the stairs. Now that that is cleared up, here's what happened. It was a particularly sunny day at the complex, so I decided I was going to go outside and see if any of my friends were outside, so I could hang out with them instead of wasting my day away inside. I changed into shorts and a t-shirt. I dressed way more tomboyish back then, and headed out to my aunt's apartment. Made my way down to the corridor, came from underneath the stairs, and began walking to the park. I had only made it about halfway when I hear, "Hey, you!" loudly from a corridor 3 stories up. I look up and see a face, but can't make it out. I could tell it was a male, but his voice sounded like a kid's voice, and he looked like a kid from where I was. I pointed to myself and shouted back, "Me?" And he said, "Yeah, you. Can you come up here for a minute?" I stopped for a moment to think about the situation. My 13-year-old mind just chopped it up that he was one of the neighborhood kids wanting to talk or something. So without another thought, I headed up the stairs towards where I saw him. I finally got up there to see a black man, around 35 or 40, sitting on the steps waiting for me. He was dressed in a striped polo shirt, khaki shorts, and those sandals that make you think of Jesus. He seriously looks like an oversized 5-year-old. As soon as I saw him, I had a feeling in my gut of dread. I'm sure my face looked confused, and I blurted out, "What do you want?" He starts gawking about my hair and asks me why I dress the way I dress, and keeps suggesting I should go in his apartment so he could show me around. The creepiest thing is how he looked at me when he suggested it. It was the creepiest expression I've ever seen someone make. The expression is hard to explain, but it led me to believe that even at 13, he had sinister plans once in his apartment. I quickly said that my aunt was expecting me, and that I needed to go back to her apartment or she'd come looking and I'd be in trouble. Then he tried to ask what number apartment it was, and if he could escort me there. I was shocked at the thought of that. I hastily said, "No, I can make it there on my own, but thank you anyway." He just looked at me with a blank stare for a few seconds, like he was thinking of what to do or say next. Then, his facial expression was now clearly disappointed, and before I could say anything else, I sprinted down the stairs and ran right back to my aunt's apartment. I didn't know if he had seen where I went. I didn't know if he followed. All I know is I didn't give him the chance to play out his sadistic intentions, whatever they were. I told my aunt, since she had seen me lock all the locks on the door and screen door. She called the cops, and I made a statement, but since he never touched me or physically harmed me, there wasn't much they could do about the situation. I made sure never to go up any more stairs, unless I for sure knew the person, and to stay away from the area where his apartment was for the rest of the summer. I don't know what would have happened had I not thought on my feet and stayed up on those stairs longer than I did. Apartment creeper from my teenhood, let's not meet again. This incident happened to me in July of 2015. Just for clarification, I'm a 22-year-old female. 2014 was a rough year for me. I went through an awful breakup with my first boyfriend that sent me into a depression that I never thought I'd get out of. After a 2-week visit at a psychiatry ward in a hospital, I finally started to open my eyes to how great life could be. Started working out, made some new friends, and decided to go into the dating game with the help of a funny little website called Plenty of Fish. I met a lot of weirdos on there, but also met some really decent people, so I can't say it was all bad. I stated in my profile that I wasn't looking for anything particular, but whatever happens, happens. A guy who lives about an hour away from me in a town where I grew up messaged me one day. We had mutual friends. A distant friend of mine dated his sister, who I met a few times, and she was cool. And after a few conversations on Plenty of Fish, we added each other on Facebook. Well, that summer, my best friend Katie and her boyfriend Lincoln and I decided to drive out to a bar in that town because Lincoln's friend was playing a gig. We'd been there for an hour or two, and I was kind of buzzed. I was messaging the guy from Plenty of Fish, Justin, and told him to swing by for a smoke and a chat. A few minutes later, Justin shows up, and we hang out for a few minutes before he goes to the other side of the bar to play the slot machines. Note that the entire time he was with us, he wasn't drinking at all, and just had his face in the slot machine for like 2 hours straight. At one point, I asked Katie if we could go out to her car because I wanted a shot of vodka that I brought, just in case I ran out of money and didn't feel drunk enough. She agrees, and her and Lincoln and I make our way out to the car. Lincoln ends up locking the keys in the car, and we're just there wondering if we should beat out the back window or find something to pry the door open with. And out comes Justin. We explain the situation to him, and he claims his house is down the road a bit, and he has a coat hanger or something that we can use to unlock the door. Katie and Lincoln agreed, and I offered to go with him, hoping to get to know him a little more on the way. Justin didn't seem drunk at all, and to this day, I'm not sure if he was and just really good at acting sober. We get in the car and pull out of the parking lot. We're barely 15 seconds away from the bar when we see a police car parked at the convenience store, across and up the street a little. The lights flicker on, and the car pulls out and starts coming after us right away. Justin is panicking. I don't know why, I tell him just to pull over and it'll be fine. But he had other plans, being a high-speed police chase. I don't know how fast he was going, but it felt like the speed of light. I remember telling him, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. He said, don't worry. My house is close. I got this. He was turning corners like crazy, each time slamming on his brakes and spinning out 3 or 4 times before going again. 2 or 3 police cars were right behind us with sirens and lights on, but he was determined to lose them. Next thing I know, we're in a ditch. Justin yells, run, and exits his car, running straight into the woods. I get out, very lucky to be unharmed. Some police officers are waiting for me at the top of the ditch, telling me to put my hands up and whatnot. I'm scared as fuck. Never thought I'd be in a situation like this. An ambulance shows up. I tell them I'm fine and don't need treatment. I then sit in a cop car for 2 hours straight, talking to an officer who was recording my statement. I had no way to get a hold of Katie, who at first thinks I ditched her to hook up with this guy. The cops finally reach her, and she's freaking out because they don't even tell her whether or not I'm okay over the phone. So she thought I was dead or seriously injured until she saw me in the flesh. I ended up smashing their back window out with a rock and rushed to come see if I was okay. Katie and I slow motion ran towards each other and gave each other the most loving hug while crying in each other's arms. It was a scary night, but it could have been a lot worse. And here's the best part. I received a message from Justin on Facebook the next day. He apologized, kind of. Proceeded to ask, round 2. Haha. He's even had the nerve to ask me to hang out multiple times since. Justin, you put my life in severe danger. We're never meeting again.